Anderson. Oh my, he got hit! Looking to finish it! It is all over!
Well, as there are gentle giants who don't need to puff up to make their names known, we also have the annoyingly boastful fighters that sing their own praises. Anyways, they get humiliated from time to time. Today we'll explore some of the most cocky MMA fighters who got absolutely destroyed. These fighters were so confident in their abilities that they talked trash to their opponents, only to be humbled in the cage. Let's explore 10 of these cocky fighters who got hit with some serious karma. Number 1. Conor McGregor vs Dustin Poirier. Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier faced off for the third time at UFC 264 on July 10, 2021. The fight was highly anticipated, as the two fighters had split their first two encounters. In the final seconds of the round, McGregor threw a punch that forced Poirier to take a backward step.
On top of Conor. Also, wars of attrition. He's been through.
As McGregor followed up, he stepped on Poirier's foot and his ankle buckled. McGregor fell to the ground in pain, and the fight was stopped by the referee. The injury was a devastating blow to McGregor, who had been hoping to avenge his loss to Poirier in January 2021. It also put a dampener on what had been an exciting fight up to that point. In the lead up to the fight, McGregor was his usual cocky self. He made several disparaging remarks about Poirier and even predicted that he would knock him out in the first round. However, Poirier refused to be intimidated, and he came into the fight with a clear game plan. In the end, Poirier's strategy paid off, and he was able to get the victory. The win was a major upset, and it put Poirier in a strong position to challenge for the UFC lightweight title. McGregor's cockiness backfired on him, and he ended up paying the price. The injury to his ankle was a serious one, and it was unclear whether he would be able to return to the UFC. However, one thing is for sure, he will never forget the night that Dustin Poirier knocked him out. Number 2. Anderson Silva vs Chris Weidman. Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman faced off at UFC 162 on July 6, 2013 for the UFC Middleweight Championship. Silva was the defending champion and was considered to be one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Weidman was the undefeated challenger and was seen as a rising star in the middleweight division. The fight was a highly anticipated one, and Silva was the betting favorite.
From the bottom, Silva.
He came out of the gates aggressively, as he usually did, and he landed several good punches and kicks. However, Weidman was able to weather the storm and land some of his shots. In the second round, Weidman landed a hard right hand that stunned Silva. Silva tried to recover, but Weidman followed up with a series of punches that knocked him out. The win was a major upset and it made Weidman the new UFC middleweight champion. Silva's cockiness backfired on him, and he ended up paying the price. The knockout loss was a major upset, and it was a reminder that no fighter is unbeatable. Silva would go on to lose the rematch to Weidman in 2014, and he would never regain the middleweight title. Number 3. Ronda Rousey vs Holly Holm. This was a mixed martial arts event held on the 14th of November 2015 at Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, Australia. It was the most attended UFC event in the history of the company at the time, with 56,214 people filling the stadium. Rousey was the reigning UFC Women's Bantamweight champion, having won her first 12 fights by armbar submission within the first round. She was heavily favored to defeat Holm, who was a former world champion boxer and kickboxer. Rousey came into the fight with a lot of swagger, calling Holm a paper champion and predicting that she would win by armbar in the first round.
Turn mixed martial artist.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
She's hurt.
Is in trouble.
She's hurt.
Holm, on the other hand, was more reserved, but she was confident in her striking skills and her ability to keep the fight at a distance. The fight started as expected, with Rousey charging forward and Holm circling away. Holm landed a good few punches, but Rousey was able to close the distance and take Holm down. However, Holm was able to scramble back to her feet and avoid the armbar. Round 2 followed a similar pattern, with Rousey trying to close the distance, but being unable to, frustrated by Holmes' stick-and-move strategy. Rousey stumbled forward after taking a straight left to her chin, and while rising, Holm connected with a kick to the side of Rousey's neck, knocking her out. Holm pounced on the fallen Rousey, causing referee Herb Dean to end the bout. Rousey was understandably cocky before the fight. She had never been defeated, and she was the most dominant force in the UFC Women's Bantamweight division. However, Holm was a very skilled striker, and she was able to exploit Rousey's weaknesses. The kick that knocked Rousey out was a perfect example of Holmes' striking ability. The loss to Holm was a wake-up call for Rousey. She realized that she could not rely on her judo skills alone to win fights, She needed to improve her striking and her overall MMA skills. Rousey went on to defeat Amanda Nunes in her next fight, but she retired from MMA in 2016. Ho went on to defend her title against Miesha Tate and Jermaine Durandamy. She lost the title to Tate in 2016, but she has since bounced back with 2 wins. She is currently ranked number 4 in the UFC Women's Bantamweight rankings. Number 4. Lyoto Machida vs Vita Belfort. This took place on June 13, 2012 at HSBC Arena in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The fight was the main event of UFC 147 and was for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. Machida was the reigning champion, having won the title by defeating Rashad Evans in 2011. He was known for his unorthodox style, which relied on counter-striking and karate techniques. Belfort was a former UFC middleweight champion and was known for his knockout power. Belfort came into the fight as the underdog, but he was confident in his ability to win. He called Machida boring and predicted that he would knock him out. Machida, on the other hand, was more reserved, but he was confident in his ability to outstrike Belfort. The fight started with Machida landing a few good punches, but Belfort was able to weather the storm and land some of his own. In the second round, Belfort connected with a head kick that knocked Machida down. Machida was able to get back to his feet, but he was hurt. Belfort continued to press the attack and eventually knocked Machida out with a punch. In terms of who was cocky before the fight, it was Belfort. He called Machida boring and predicted that he would knock him out. This led to a lot of trash talk between the two fighters in the lead-up to the fight. However, Belfort backed up his words with his performance, knocking Machida out in the second round. He went on to win 2 more fights before retiring in 2018. Machida also bounced back from the loss, winning his next 2 fights. He is currently ranked number 12 in the UFC light heavyweight rankings. Number 5. Jose Aldo vs Conor McGregor. Jose Aldo vs Conor McGregor was a mixed martial arts bout that took place on December 12, 2015 at MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. The fight was the main event of UFC 194 and was for the UFC Featherweight Championship. Aldo was the reigning champion, having held the title since 2011. He was undefeated in 18 fights and was considered one of the greatest featherweight fighters of all time. McGregor was the interim champion, having won the title by defeating Chad Mendes in July 2015. He was a rising star in the UFC and was known for his charisma and trash talk.
Jose Aldo Jr. Conor relaxed and smiling.
The fight started with McGregor landing a few good punches, but Aldo was able to weather the storm and land some of his own. In the first 13 seconds of the fight, McGregor landed a left hook that knocked Aldo out cold. The fight was over in just 13 seconds, making it the fastest knockout in UFC title fight history. McGregor called Aldo a little rat and predicted that he would knock him out in the first round. This led to a lot of trash talk between the two fighters in the lead up to the fight. However, McGregor backed up his words with his performance, knocking Aldo out in just 13 seconds. He went on to win the UFC lightweight title in 2016, and he is currently one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Aldo also bounced back from the loss, winning his next 2 fights. He is currently ranked number 3 in the UFC featherweight rankings. Number 6. Fabricio Werdum vs Stipe Miocic. This bout took place on May 14, 2016, at Arena de Baixada in Curitiba, Brazil. The fight was the main event of UFC 198, and it was for the UFC Heavyweight Championship. Werdum was the reigning champion, having won the title by defeating Cain Velasquez in 2014. He was a former UFC interim heavyweight champion and was known for his jiu-jitsu skills. Miocic was the number 1 contender, having won his last 4 fights.
Fabricio aggressively attacking.
He was known for his striking and wrestling. The fight started with Miocic landing a few good punches, but Werdum was able to weather the storm and land some of his own. In the second round, Miocic landed a right hand that knocked Werdum down. Werdum was able to get back to his feet, but he was hurt. Miocic continued to press the attack and eventually knocked Werdum out with a punch. Werdum called Miocic a little boy and predicted that he would knock him out. This led to a lot of trash talk between the two fighters in the lead up to the fight. However, Miocic backed up his words with his performance, knocking Werdum out in the second round. He went on to defend the title 3 more times before losing it to Francis Ngannou in 2021. Werdum also bounced back from the loss, winning his next 2 fights. He's currently ranked number 15 in the UFC heavyweight rankings. Number 7. Tyron Woodley vs Kamaru Usman. This was a mixed martial arts bout that took place on March 2, 2019 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. The fight was the co-main event of UFC 235 and was for the UFC Welterweight Championship. Woodley was the reigning champion, having won the title by defeating Stephen Thompson in 2016. He was known for his wrestling and his power striking. Usman was the number 1 contender, having won his last 10 fights. He was known for his wrestling and his pressure fighting. The fight started with Usman taking the center of the octagon and Woodley circling away. Usman landed a few good punches, but Woodley was able to weather the storm and land some of his own. In the second round, Usman landed a takedown and took Woodley down. Usman controlled Woodley on the ground for the rest of the round. The third round was more of the same, with Usman controlling Woodley on the ground. Woodley was able to get back to his feet a few times, but Usman was able to take him down again. Usman won the fight by unanimous decision, becoming the new UFC welterweight champion.
Stagnant through the whole fight, and Usman just stayed ahead, always first.
Woodley even called Usman a wrestler and predicted that he would knock him out. However, Usman backed up his words with his performance, dominating Woodley on the ground and winning the fight by unanimous decision. He went on to defend the title 5 more times, and he is currently the longest reigning UFC welterweight champion. Woodley also bounced back from the loss, winning his next fight against Gilbert Burns. He is currently ranked number 8 in the UFC welterweight rankings. Number 8. Cody Garbrandt vs. Dominick Cruz. This was a bout that took place on March 3, 2018 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. The fight was the co-main event of UFC 222 and was for the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Garbrandt was the reigning champion, having won the title by defeating TJ Dillashaw in 2017. He was known for his aggressive striking and his knockout power. Cruz was the number 1 contender, having won his last 3 fights. He was known for his slick striking and his footwork. The fight was heavily hyped, with Garbrandt being the slight favorite. However, Cruz was confident in his ability to win, and he predicted that he would outstrike Garbrandt. Garbrandt, on the other hand, was cockier, calling Cruz an old man and predicting that he would knock him out. The fight started with Garbrandt coming out aggressive, landing a few good punches. However, Cruz was able to circle away and avoid the majority of the punches. In the second round, Cruz started to find his rhythm, landing more punches and kicks. In the third round, Cruz landed a good few punches that hurt Garbrandt. Garbrandt tried to come back, but Cruz was able to outstrike him and win the fight by unanimous decision. In terms of who was cocky before the fight, it was Garbrandt. He called Cruz an old man and predicted that he would knock him out. This led to a lot of trash talk between the two fighters in the lead up to the fight. Garbrandt also made fun of Cruz's injured knee, which Cruz had surgery on in 2016. Number 9. Joanna Jędrzejczyk vs. Rose Namajunas. This took place on November 4, 2016 at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The fight was the main event of UFC 217 and was for the UFC Strawweight Championship. Jędrzejczyk was the reigning champion, having won the title in 2015. She was undefeated in 14 fights and was considered one of the greatest strawweight fighters of all time. Namajunas was the number 1 contender, having won her last 4 fights. She was known for her aggressive striking and her submission skills. The fight started with Namajunas coming out aggressive, landing a few good punches. Jędrzejczyk was able to weather the storm and land some of her own. In the first round, Namajunas landed a head kick that stunned Jędrzejczyk. Jędrzejczyk tried to come back, but Namajunas was able to control the fight and win the round.
Striking system, it takes time, and Rose has finally mastered it. She became the...
In the second round, Namajunas landed a few more good punches and kicks. Jędrzejczyk was hurt and she started to fade. In the final minute of the round, Namajunas landed a flurry of punches that knocked Jędrzejczyk out. The fight was over in just 5 minutes and 4 seconds. Jędrzejczyk had called Namajunas a nobody and pretended that she would knock her out with confidence. Jędrzejczyk said to Namajunas before the fight that she's a nobody. She doesn't belong in the same ring as me. And she also said, I'm going to knock her out in the first round. Namajunas went on to defend the title twice, defeating Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Jessica Andrade. She lost the title to Zhang Weili in 2019, but she has since won it back and is currently the UFC Strawweight Champion. Number 10. Michael Bisping vs. Luke Rockhold. This bout took place on June 4, 2016 at the Forum in Inglewood, California. The fight was the co-main event of UFC 199 and was for the UFC Middleweight Championship. Bisping was the reigning champion, having won the title by defeating Anderson Silva in 2016. He was known for his striking and his toughness. Rockhold was the number 1 contender, having won his last 6 fights. He was known for his wrestling and his ground and pound. The fight started with Bisping coming out aggressive, landing a few good punches. Rockhold was able to weather the storm and land some of his own. In the first round, Bisping landed a left hook that stunned Rockhold. Rockhold tried to come back, but Bisping was able to land a few more punches and knock him out. The fight was over in just 3 minutes and 37 seconds. In terms of who was cocky before the fight, it was Rockhold. He called Bisping a journeyman and predicted that he would knock him out. This led to a lot of trash talk between the two fighters in the lead up to the fight. Bisping went on to defend the title against Dan Henderson and Yoel Romero. He lost the title to Gajar Mousasi in 2017, but he retired from MMA in 2018. Rockhold has since bounced back from the loss, winning 3 of his last 4 fights. He is currently ranked number 7 in the UFC middleweight rankings. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe for more content like this. And remember, even the best fighters can be humbled in the cage. So, the next time you see a fighter talking trash, remember that they could be the next one to get knocked out.